Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar news update video. So the main thing in this one is that we have, I would say most of the schedule for San Diego Comic-Con 2024, which of course is coming up towards the end of the month. So we're getting the schedule like 2 weeks beforehand. So far we have the schedule for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of the event. We just don't have Saturday or Sunday, but just from these 3 days, we have what our main expected panels would be. So I'm not really sure we would be maybe expecting anything more in addition to what we have here, but I will keep you up to date. I'll probably do a video maybe Sunday if anything does happen, or if you follow me on Twitter, you'll know probably a little bit sooner what the deal is. So let's get into it here with the fact that, okay, you go to the schedule, you search Avatar, that's probably going to bring up everything that there is. So there's a few things that come up. So straight away you can see, okay, Braving the Elements, that's good. We have the Avatar publishing panel down here, and then a lot of the other stuff where it's like, oh, the description mentions Avatar usually just means, okay, someone who is related to Avatar somewhere down the road is involved in the panel. In this case, I believe it is referring to either Netflix Avatar or James Cameron's Avatar. Yeah, I think this is James Cameron's Avatar is in the description here. This is a signing with Michaela Murphy, who voices Toph. This panel we will talk about a little bit because it mentions an Avatar Studios person specifically. The diversity panel is talking about someone involved with Netflix Avatar. And this, I think, just mentions in relation to someone who wrote... I'm not sure it's directly Avatar comic related. I think it's an actor from Avatar, I think, that did something. It's not related to like news about Avatar. That's the point. So yeah, let's get into this stuff. I'll actually lead with the one where there probably isn't too much to it. So this is what to know when selling an animated show. The big thing is that industry executive Isabella Bocher, who is the creative executive at Avatar Studios, is going to be on this panel where they will discuss the process of selling an animated show from concept to greenlight. So obviously the idea is, wait, Avatar Studios has not actually announced a show yet. We know they're working on shows, but that is different from selling like a movie, I would guess. So is this Isabella Bocher talking about that from her perspective in her current role, or previous industry experience selling other shows? She just happens to be at Avatar Studios now. It's one of those ones where maybe someone will attend this and tell us if anything comes out about it, but I'd be stunned if they dropped anything hugely of interest at this panel. But might be one worth keeping an ear out for ultimately. But anyway, Avatar Braving the Elements podcast live on the Thursday of the convention, July 25th, 10:30 to 11:30 Pacific. And obviously we have the hosts of the podcast, Janet and Dante Bosco. So they're there, of course, it's their panel. Special guests, Greg Baldwin, voice of Iroh, Michaela Murphy, voice of Toph, and also Cara O'Neill, who is from Dark Horse Comics, of course. This is an interesting one because I'm like, in a way, why is she there on the Braving the Elements panel? In terms of, is she the moderator of this panel? But because it's a podcast recording live type thing, surely that means Janet and Dante are hosting the panel. Now, they mentioned they're doing trivia and stuff like that, so maybe they'll turn it over to Cara O'Neill for that section, but they've done trivia stuff themselves on their own podcast. So I am guessing that this probably means that at some point they will turn their attention to on this panel talking about publishing, because they mention here, the actual description of the panel is, we'll talk about the latest and greatest happenings in the Avatar verse and put trivia skills to the test. So obviously trivia at the end for prizes, I'm guessing. But what is the latest and greatest happenings in the Avatar verse right now? Well, you'd say it's news about Avatar Studios projects, but is that actually going to happen here? There's no Mike and Brian here, so it's not going to be a major announcement if there is one. We have the precedents from previous versions of this panel where they have announced stuff. Like this was the panel a few years ago where Janet Varney via video came in and said the first Avatar Studios movie will be about Aang and friends. It came from a podcast panel. So they've done it before. Will they do it again? We probably need to learn about the first show to a certain degree. It would be cool if they had anything about the movie to actually mention, especially now that like they've announced voice actors for that movie. They have like the working title initially. They can't just ignore that exists. But I'm guessing Cara O'Neill is here to highlight the fact that, hey, there's a new Roku novel out on the publishing side of things. Next month, there's an Iroh and June comic coming out. So maybe that's specifically why they have Greg Baldwin here. I'm wondering, might they maybe do a little bit of a read-through of some preview pages? Maybe have Greg do Iroh. Maybe Michaela Murphy can do some June. If they want to do that, that's a little bit of a thing to make use of the voice actors there. That's always a fun thing to see. But will they do it? Because the comic is still like a month away by the time of this panel. Because it's been delayed so much, it's now towards the end of August. So that's a little bit of an issue. So I'm kind of wondering, like, is there a bigger Dark Horse announcement? And maybe Cara O'Neill is going to do it at the big panel, but they'll talk about it more at the publishing panel. I don't know. So this could mean quite a bit. It could mean nothing. It's interesting she is here and also on the other panel, as we'll get to. So this is very much a all or nothing style panel where I think we're either going to come out of it with, oh, actually they surprised us with a reasonable amount of news, or actually there's nothing to talk about. Because if they just have a standard podcast panel and there isn't really any news, like, it's not going to be worth talking about, at least for me anyway. So anyway, next up, we have the publishing panel itself. Water, Earth, Fire, Air, continuing the Avatar legacy. That's, of course, what they call it. So Abrams Books, Dark Horse Comics, Nickelodeon, Webtoon, and Magpie Games. It features publishing creator and writers, Avatar and Korra. Panelists are FC Yi, Randy Rabai, Anne Hetzel, who's the editorial director at Abrams Books, David Chinook Lee, who is the head of US Webtoon, and it is moderated by Cara O'Neill from Dark Horse. So notably, of course, they don't have anyone from Magpie on the panel, and then there is no creatives, you would say, no like artist or writer for Avatar or Korra comics on the panel, but they do have ultimately the person who's going to reveal the news, like a really high up person at Dark Horse. So I wouldn't be too worried that there maybe isn't the people there, just because I often feel like the more creators you have on the panel, the less opportunity for news you have, because, you know, you can do news without the creators really being there ultimately. And a lot of the times they can never openly talk about what's happening here. And that's kind of the interesting thing about this. So like 3 people basically related to the novels here. So FCE from the first 4 novels. Nice that he's here, but is he working on something else? You know, you're kind of asking this question. Is there a further significance to him being here, or is it just like we brought him back? Randy Rabai, of course, the Roku novel will have just come out earlier that week, July 23rd. This is on July 26th. But that means that they can't really talk about the book because it's brand new out. You assume most of the audience is not going to have read the book. So they're going to highlight that. I guess you can buy it at the convention somewhere. There's probably like an exclusive edition with the clean cover or something like that. Signed editions, maybe. But other than, I suppose, maybe just some general chit chat between the editor and the 2 writers about like working on Avatar, are they going to announce anything about the novels? The only thing that they probably could and probably should say is, if by the time we get here we don't already know, they should be telling us if Randy Rabai is writing Chronicles of the Avatar Book 6, and if it is a Roku follow-up book. I think, having read the book, it probably has to be a follow-up to a certain degree, or like the second Roku novel. I don't think they'll announce the title or cover. It's probably a little early, but I'd like them to at least confirm that that is what the next book will be, so that you are waiting for a sequel. So that would be nice to get. Otherwise, I don't really know what else they really have to say. Will they mention the paperbacks or anything like that of books? I don't know. Is there anything else that could surprise us with the novels? I'm not really sure. Webtoons have someone on the panel. Obviously, they're going to promote the idea that, hey, the comics are now available for free through Webtoons. It's a slightly altered format, but it's the same content. They're onto the Search now, so they've gone through one of the full comic trilogies, but they maybe might need to announce, like, say, what they're doing with Korra comics. How are they going to handle, like, the short stories, like Lost Adventures, Team Avatar Tales, some of the free comic book day books? How are they doing that stuff? I wonder if there's maybe potentially the idea of, is there in any way an option for Webtoon to get new original content just using that format? So we get like a weekly release of comic in some way or something like that? Maybe, but I'm guessing this is more just to promote Webtoon because it's relatively new. And I would say apart from the initial announcement, it maybe hasn't been talked about within the fandom too much. But we'll see how that goes. Magpie, because of where they are at with just, I suppose, final touches, just waiting to finalize the Uncle Iroh book, and that means they're in a situation where they don't have an exact release date. It could be any time in the next couple of weeks, but it could be as far away as like end of August type thing. So they have that to maybe talk about. Will they tease it a little bit? They could have slides, even though they have no one from Magpie on the panel. They might have slides of just some images, but because of where they're at, it has to be talking about that book. I'd be super surprised if they have anything about the Spirit World book, but maybe they'll ask Cara O'Neill to mention that, like, hey, the next book will be the Spirit World book, but who knows what the situation is there. Which brings us to, I suppose, Nickelodeon. The reason they mentioned separately is this is meant to bring in all the other publishers of like the I Am Toph, I Am Katara style books. I Am Toph has the cover already, so there's nothing really to talk about there. Will they mention the box set of the I Am books? Will they mention the Cabbage Merchant book, My Cabbages? We have some preview pages for that already, but I can see that being a book they might actually want to focus on a little bit more. So I'd actually be very okay with them mentioning that again. Otherwise, we get to Dark Horse, and this is where things are very like, you need to say something, but I don't know how much you actually will say. Again, Bounty Hunter and the Tea Brewer is still basically a month away by the time we get to this panel. August 20th/21st, I think, is the release date at this point, assuming it doesn't get delayed between now and then. So they've already previewed it at panels, so what else is there to say apart from reminding people it's coming out? So if there's an announcement, something brand new to be made here, it probably has to be what the next Avatar comic is. So by that same creative team, because that book's been done for a while, what is the follow-up to Bounty Hunter and the Tea Brewer? What is the 6th Avatar one-shot comic? And I think we realistically, the timing should be in a place where you should be able to reveal a cover and a title to us, which should be somewhat exciting. Is it confirmed that that's going to happen? No idea, but they should be doing that because it's been so long. No idea who it's going to be. It could be Sokka, Mei, Ty Lee. Beyond that, I'm very up in the air on who it could be. Will we go back around and cover characters who've already got a one-shot? Not sure. On Korra comic side of things, we need a date. We need an update on the Mystery of Penkan Island, the Mako comic, the first Korra one-shot comic. They talked about it at New York Comic Con last year, and it was mentioned at panels previously. It's obviously been heavily delayed earlier in its production, as well as now in the middle of art work being done. But it's now been long enough since the last minor update we've got on this book where you really do need to say something here and give us a sense for when it's coming out. They've already shown the cover. They've already actually shown us some preview pages. So maybe some colored preview pages is something they could do. Otherwise, they just really need to announce it so that the description can come out. That's probably the big thing that we need. What is the official like description text for this book? So we have a more complete idea of that. It's probably way too early because of that to announce what the next Korra one-shot is. But I would like it if they could maybe drop who the character is, even if they don't have like a cover as such. just to keep the updates kind of flowing. They do have the Team Avatar Treasury hardcover to potentially mention, but again, a lot of those reprint style stuff, they don't tend to overly focus on at these panels. They just don't. So that's just a thing that's out there. It's been solicited already. We know it exists. They might mention it. Beasts of the Four Nations, are they going to talk about it? Who knows? I hope if they do have time for a Q&A, I hope someone at the panel asks about Beasts of the Four Nations, the last deluxe set book. I think someone needs to ask the question and kind of force them to answer what's going on with that. Because if it feels like it's in a situation where if no one asks, they're not going to volunteer an answer. Otherwise, it is just a situation where, like, okay, what are you doing right now? But then, what are plans going to change for publishing when Avatar Studios gets going? That is the kind of shadow lingering over everything here, is that we get ever closer to Avatar Studios being an actual thing, and how does that affect the publishers? Because some of them are going to have to do probably more tie-in style books. You assume that is mainly probably like Magpie and maybe like the Nickelodeon publishers are going to have to do that. I assume that the novels will stay on course and do what they've been doing, just about different avatars as they go on. The comics are in a weird spot where it's like, when we get that Aang movie, does that then open the door to the comics can now tell stories in the older ATLA era? Or are we still stuck with doing what we're doing? Are we just one-shots forever? Or is there room for growth for the comics and moving back into bigger territory? That's what we want to know. Probably still too early to really talk about. Final thing I'll say is just that, broadly speaking, I think more bigger announcements in recent years have happened at New York Comic-Con over San Diego Comic-Con, just because New York is the more comics focused panel. It's a more comic focused event, whereas SDCC I think has become more just pop culture general big event rather than specifically being a comic con necessarily. But we have had announcements at SDCCs in the past. So we'll see if on the Saturday and Sunday there is anything else. I'm not sure what it possibly could be. I'm guessing some of the actors who are here from Avatar might have signings. Like, there's no Greg Baldwin signing so far, so I'm guessing he might have a signing at the weekend or something like that. And we'll see if any other people are showing up at different panels. I'd be surprised if there is anything super like official here overall. You know, there's maybe a chance that like Netflix have some sort of a panel and it includes, you know, some of the cast or crew or something like that, mentioning that. But because of where production is on Netflix, where like they're gonna start filming shortly, the timing's maybe not super ideal for that overall. But you know, it's gonna be interesting, I think, overall where we're at with this. And then I'll just wrap up here with just something a little bit kind of different here, and that is just to highlight that I did get my copy of the Rise of Kyoshi paperback early. So I just randomly ordered this, it shipped, didn't expect it to ship or get it this early, but I did. So I believe this is actually, like, I posted it on Twitter like a day or two ago. This is our first time getting a look at the cover of the paperback. Now, obviously, it's basically the same as the hardcover. It's just, as you can see here, it's moved this sort of ink swirl pattern from just being on the edges of the book to more being covering the entire kind of bottom here. That means they've flipped the colors around, so we have Rise of Kyoshi text in white. We also now have Chronicles of the Avatar written here. When the Kyoshi books first came out, of course, we didn't know it was part of an overall series called Chronicles of the Avatar. That only came in with the Yang Chen books, so nice to see that included here. We know we're getting Shadow of Kyoshi, where it has a similar thing with the cover with the red, but they actually didn't show us the updated version of the first book until I got it in hand here. This just says, you know, bestseller up here. Otherwise, it's very standard. Comparing these sort of spines of the book, you can see we have the paperback in black, which I think makes it look a little bit different than the more gray here. Otherwise, again, it's very similar. Back is different. On the hardcover, you get basically a passage from inside the book, but the paperback, of course, has the blurb on the back rather than on the kind of inside of the dust jacket, basically. So that's nice and makes sense in the way that they do it. Only other real thing is just obviously when the Kyoshi book first came out, it was 2019, it was pre-Avatar Studios, so we have the older style Avatar logo. The paperback has the new style logo with the element symbols replacing the text, of course, so that's kind of nice. And then in terms of the inside stuff, they do promote the other books in here, including the Shadow of Kyoshi paperback coming out in October. The hardcover is available for Yang Chen, which I assume will get paperbacks probably going into next year. They just, I don't think, have been announced yet. They also have Reckoning of Roku ad in the back here because, of course, this paperback is officially released on the same day Reckoning of Roku is officially released, July 23rd. So that's that. Otherwise, there's none of the extras from the exclusive edition of Rise of Kyoshi is in here. There's no like images or anything like that. They didn't include any of that stuff. You keep the foreword that was in the original release, but that's all. It is just the text of the book, exactly as it is in the hardcover. But you know, it's nice to get this. Obviously, there's nothing super crazy to talk about with it. That's why I'm not doing it as a separate video, basically, because it is just the paperback version that we've, you know, announced a very long time ago. I got it mainly because the novels are important to me as an Avatar fan. I think they're some of the most important pieces of content we have got, especially post-Korra. Like, the novels are so important to getting us through these last couple of years, especially I think since Avatar Studios has been announced, but there's like been no news. So it's been good to get giant chunks of Avatar content through the novels, and this first one especially I think is rather special. The Rise of Kyoshi I think is always going to be like the novel that I think they're going to have a hard time ever besting, really. It was just, it hit at the right time, the right characters, the right story. It's a special piece of content for Avatar fans, I think. So I don't mind having another edition of this book, this time in paperback. So yeah, that's the video. So in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on the Rise of Kyoshi paperback. And also the panels, of course. What are your thoughts on this? Braving the Elements panel. We have our standard publishing panel. And maybe some other little bits and pieces. The schedule still has to fully come out. What do you think we're going to get in terms of news? Will there be anything at the podcast panel? Or will it, as usual, all be about the publishing stuff? Let me know in the comments below, but that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.